So students, we were studying external analysis, political and legal factors, chapter number 6, in which we have understood what is the external environment and what are the factors, what are the components which form part of the external environment. We introduced ourselves with the term PESTLE, P-E-S-T-L-E, or simply PEST or STP step. Okay, these are all the same things. After that, we have understood what is the meaning of a political system and what is the meaning of a legal system and how these systems work. Also, we have understood different kinds of legislations which are in place. Two types of legislations are there, general and specific. So general legislations we had to study, not specific ones. In general legislations or general laws, we have studied the employee protection laws. All right. The next thing which we need to study and understand is principles of data protection. So first thing first, data is the property of the owner, the generator. For example, my data is my property. So anybody else cannot have it. Anybody else should not have it until unless I agree and I allow the others to have it. All right. Except for the government. Yes, government can have data about anything, anyone. So we'll basically understand the principles of natural protection of data, like what should be the general things which should be protected with regard to data of any consumer or client or supplier or anybody else. All right. Basically, if you are dealing with data which do not pertain to you, then you need to follow some steps or some measures so that that data is protected and not misused against the person to which that data pertains. So let's try to understand. As the business world becomes more complex, organizations are holding increasing amounts of data, yes, about individuals. They are holding data about their customers, their suppliers, and other people as well, even competitors. Data protection is concerned with protecting individuals against misuse of information. So use of information is not bad, but misuse is bad. Misuse may harm the person to whom the data pertains, right? So there are two sets of laws. One is international, that is General Data Protection Regulation. And another piece is Data Protection Act. Both of these things were announced or made applicable from 2018. So General Data Protection Regulation is something which is applicable on whole of European Union. Data Protection Act 2018 is applicable on UK, and it is in line with General Data Protection Regulations. So basically, the supranational authority gave General Data Protection Regulations, and the national authority gave Data Protection Act 2018. So these outline the basic requirements of data protection and also includes penalties and actions to be taken in case these regulations or the provisions of Act are not fulfilled. So everyone responsible for using personal data has to follow strict rules called data protection principles, which are dictated under the General Data Protection Regulation. It is an EU law introduced in 2018, which aims at the following. First is that the information and data are interchangeably used, but data is something which has no meaning or less meaning attached to it. Information is something which is meaningful. So meaningful data is actually called information. So this regulation, this set of principles has the following objectives. First is that the information is used fairly, lawfully, and transparently. Means the user makes it transparent and fair to use data of the person, uh, of any person, and it is also using the data lawfully, not against the law. Used for specified and explicit purposes. The data is used for all the purposes which are specified and made clear at the beginning only. Explicit purposes, I would say. So, what is an example of this? When you download an app from your app store or from Play Store or from anywhere, the app asks you the permissions to uh, access your photographs, maybe your contacts, maybe your call details and other things. And there's a documentation attached to it, which you'll find in the terms and conditions, which elaborates that how this data will be used. So we usually do not pay attention to that. We just accept the terms and allow all the permissions. But that is a way of for an app provider or a supplier or any business person to uh, ask or seek for permission before using the data pertaining to anyone. Next is it is used in a way that it is adequate, relevant, and limited only to what it is necessary for. So data should not be used for more than necessary purposes. Data should be kept in an accurate way and it should be updated, like the data relating to age, data relating to address, and things like that should be updated whenever there's a chance to update it. So data maintained should be accurate. It should not be kept for no longer than necessary. Data should not be kept for the necessary tenure. So once the tenure is over or the deal is over, the data should not be kept. Data should be destroyed. Also, the data should be handled in a way that ensures appropriate security, including protection against unlawful and unauthorized processing, access, loss, destruction, or damage. So this sixth point is an elaborative uh, requirement which specifies that data should be handled in such a way that it should not be lost, it should not be destroyed, it should not be altered, it should not be used for unauthorized purposes, right? The data user is responsible for the security and protection of data. So now who is the data user? Data user is the business or the company who is asking the individuals or customers for data, right? For example, I am making an app and my app is asking for your data. So I am the data user. You are the data provider. All right. So the data user means me. I will be responsible for the security and protection of data against unauthorized access, alteration, destruction, disclosure, or accidental loss. All these things should not happen to your data. So I should keep all the security measures and backups in place so that any of these things are not happening. All right. Next is personal data should not be transferred to another country. So this is also important. Personal data about any person should not be transferred to another country until unless that country also has legislations relating to security of data. So these should not be transferred to another country outside the European Economic Area unless that country enables an adequate level of protection for the rights and freedom of data subjects in relation to the processing of personal data. So all these 8 points which you can see in front of you are from law or from Barrett. That's why the language can be a bit difficult or it can be tricky because this is legal language. But what we needed to understand out of all these points, I have explained it to you in detail. So these are the points. Basically, the things covered, general things covered are data protection, data security, no unauthorized usage of data, no alteration. Data should be updated and accurate, and it should not be kept in a place where there are no safe laws or other measures in place to protect data or for data freedom. All right. So this is all about the general data protection regulations. Also, there's Data Protection Act 2018, which is a UK law, and it is in line with GDPR. There's a strong legal protection for sensitive information such as race, ethnic background, religious beliefs, political opinions, trade union memberships, genetics, biometrics, health, sexual life and orientation. These kind of data should not be kept without any purpose, and there should be strict legal protection, strong legal protection of this kind of data. So if you have data relating to a person's name, person's age, it's fine. But if you have data relating to their ethnicity, their religious background, and other details, then such things can be uh, very dangerous to share with anyone. People can be targeted based on that. That's why this kind of data should be kept in strong confidence, and proper data protection should be there. The need for consent underpins the principle. Individuals must opt in whether data is collected, whenever data is collected, and there must be clear privacy notices. So this all comes whenever you are using any website or any form or any email or anything else, right? And a new app also. So generally we get these clear privacy notices, terms and conditions which we agree to without reading generally. But that is a way of receiving consent for the businesses from while they are collecting any information or any data relating to any customer or user. Those notices must be concise and transparent. So it is a requirement that those should be concise. Those should not be very long one, elaborated one. Those should be as small as possible, as clear as possible, really understandable, so that the user actually goes through that. But that doesn't happen usually. And consent must be able to be withdrawn at any time. So it is also a feature which should be provided. Like in email subscriptions, if you are getting any spam mail or any mail which is like regular in nature, because you might have subscribed to some email or some weekly journals or something, then you have the option. If you go down the page, generally you'll find an option of unsubscribe. So you can anytime unsubscribe and you can stop those mails. Also, you can ask for your information like to be deleted, right? So users should have the rights to get the data deleted, get the consent withdrawn for the usage of their data. If any of the above uh, requirements are not fulfilled, then the businesses may be charged with hefty amounts, huge fines, which is higher of, please note that, which is higher of 20 million euros or 4% of the global turnover of the company are enforced for non-compliance. So data protection is today a very important area. And yes, European law is also very strict relating to data protection when it comes to data protection of users, or sorry, the customers or individuals, especially in these areas which I mentioned here, like race, ethnic background, political opinions, trade union memberships, genetics, biometrics, sexual orientations. All these things are to be kept in very strong legal protection. If you want to learn more about data protection, then you have a paragraph here. Which you can read. In fact, you have to read it. This is an assignment for you. Read this so that you can understand what are the other rights of users, like the right to be informed about how your data is being used, access, a right to access their own personal data. So any person about whom data is collected have all these rights. Go through these rights. Next comes is data security. So one thing you need to understand is why data needs to be secured, because there's a risk with data usage. Data is vulnerable, and there can be a situation where vulnerability is explored by any risk. So what is a risk? Risk is a likelihood of happening of an unfavorable event. Like if my data gets deleted, then that is an unfavorable event for me, right? Such unfavorable event must have some probability that, okay, the probability of happening of this event is 0.05 or 5%. That is called risk. Higher the probability, higher is the risk. Higher the probability of happening of an unfavorable event for me will be higher a risk for me, right? So risk is likelihood actually. Risk means likelihood of unfavorable event. Obviously, that unfavorable event will result in some loss. Vulnerability means harmability. So anything which is not secure is more vulnerable. Risk can access or can make use of the vulnerability and pose a threat. So when any risk is able to access any vulnerability, it becomes a threat. These are related terms but have different meanings. I think I have explained enough. So with data also there is a risk because data is vulnerable, because maybe the servers are not secure, maybe they're not good enough passwords there, maybe you are sharing your information with somebody else who can recover your information, uh, pretending to be you, right? So all these vulnerabilities can be explored by the risk present, and that will be a threat for you. The purpose of data security is to minimize the threat by minimizing the risk and the vulnerabilities. Okay. So first thing, can risk be eliminated? Is it possible to fully eliminate the risk? No. Risk cannot be eliminated. Risk can be reduced to an acceptable level, but it cannot be eliminated, right? You think about it, you'll find that risk actually cannot be eliminated. It can be brought down to a very minimal acceptable level, but 100% elimination is not possible for risk, right? It is an important point and important area where questions can be asked. Okay, so there's something else which I want to discuss with you. What are the general ways in which we can protect data? They can be restricted or secured access. It would prevent unauthorized employees or outsiders from accessing information. So if I talk about your company, your job place where you are working and you have your own username and password, then if that username and password can be used by somebody else also, then also you can safeguard yourself from unauthorized access. How? If there's a system of restricted or secured access in your company, where there are terminals or there are dedicated desktops on which only your login ID and password will work, then there can be a security of unauthorized security against unauthorized access of data, right? There can be antivirus detection and removal programs also. The simple antivirus which we use in our PC or in our cell phones also. These antivirus systems, they eliminate the harmful programs which are commonly known as viruses or bugs or trojans or worms. All these kind of viruses can be eliminated using an antivirus system, which is a program which identifies and eliminates all those harmful programs which can steal your data or which can manipulate your data. So uh, antivirus protects loss of data due to computer viruses. There's a new kind of virus which recently has arisen, which is known as ransomware. Ransomware is generally a harmful program which encrypts every file in your PC and allows you a certain number of days to pay to some remote account a sum. And if you do not pay that sum, then all your encrypted files will be automatically destroyed or deleted. That kind of viruses are known as ransomware. There are many others like Trojans. There are many. There are worms. There are bugs, and there are simple viruses also. Then we have the term firewall. What is a firewall? A firewall is again a protection. It is more like an antivirus only, but it protects you from the external environment, or I would say from the internet. So it controls and redirects outsiders, restricts outsiders from accessing information on a personal computer. So generally, when your PC is connected to internet, you are accessing data from outside world. The outside world can also access data from your system. Protect your system against any unauthorized access from the outside world is firewall. I hope these three terms are understood because these are most commonly used methods of protecting data. So first we need to understand what kind of risks are there. And if we understand the risk, we'll put in place a control which removes that risk. Okay. So to reduce the risk, we have controls. Understand that. And the controls I have actually told you. They can be antiviruses, firewalls, or restricted access systems. So there's a risk of physical uh, access, which is known as physical risk. Physical risk can be like anything which impacts your data or data processing systems. There can be humidity, there can be dust. All these things they can play with your hardware in a bad manner and erase your data or make it unaccessible. So impact on the physical environment in which the system exists, like fire, like flood, or maybe vandalization by someone, like somebody comes and breaks your PC. That is also a physical access risk, physical risk, right? So physical risk can be eliminated by many ways. Like for protection against fire and flood, you can use raised floors, you can use dehumidifiers, you can use other measures. You can use a cold site, hot site. These are all technical terms which are used for eliminating physical risk. You can also place your systems in some remote location which is high enough where there is no possibility of flood or where there are anti-fire systems in place. So that is physical risk. Again, human risk is also there. Human risk is a risk that any human being will gain unauthorized access or may manipulate with your data. Access is gained to the system by unauthorized user, either physically or remotely. It can also be physical, like somebody is coming to your home, checking your PC. That risk is also there. It can also be done remotely if your PC or your system is connected with internet. Then hackers can hack into your system. So hacking, virus infection, or frauds, these are other ways of human risks. So these are different kinds of risks which are there, and these kind of risks cannot be eliminated. These can be reduced to an acceptable level. Now let's take a look at illustration number 3. It is an example of how harmful data breach can be. In April 2011, hackers gained access to 77 million PlayStation users held by Sony. So Sony has a very famous and very, I would say, successful product, that is PlayStation. It is a gaming portal and console. So the data of PlayStation users, 77 million in number, was hacked, and not just their personal information. These accounts include personal information and credit card details as well. So these credit card details and personal information together can be used to uh, pay for something which the original user is not paying for. I would say fraud. It can be used for fraud. This security failure led to significant loss of reputation. Obviously, people will now not easily believe in the security system of Sony. Although it happened in 2011 way back, but even today, users who might have gotten influenced or might have got affected that time, they will not use Sony, maybe for PlayStations or any other thing as well. So overall, the brand reputation got a loss. Sony and the sales to Sony, who estimated the cost of breach to be around 109 million, excluding the cost of compensating customers whose details were stolen. So, except for the cost, if we exclude the part of the cost incurred in paying back the customers whose credit card were used for unauthorized purchases, there was a loss of 109 million. So, there was a loss of 109 million dollars plus plus, 109 million plus, if they had to pay back to any customers whose credit cards were unauthorized, uh, were used without any authorization. Okay, so all those losses were borne by Sony, and this was only because of a small data leak. Next is TY2. Jacob has found that a utility supplier has stolen information about him. Have sold information about him to a market research company. So a utility supplier, maybe like electricity company. So the electricity company has sold the user data to a market research company. Is this an issue of data protection and data security? It should be, because maybe it's for some unauthorized use. But with the look of it, we cannot say that it is for some unauthorized use or there is any loss or manipulation. So there is nothing like, I would say, unlawful or untransparent or maybe inadequate or unnecessary uses of data. So all these things which are mentioned here, if these things are properly disclosed and these things are properly taken care of, then such sale of data is not not an issue of data protection. All right. So it looks like, prima facie, it looks like an issue of data protection, but this is very common in the market, and it is not an issue of data protection as long as all those above points mentioned in different legislations are complied with. The main risks to computer system and the data they contain include the following. Let's see about the risks and what are the countermeasures. So we'll talk about the physical damage, which can be due to fire. So against fire, what you can have? You can have documented fire procedures. You can train your staff how to use a fire extinguisher. They can be flooding, terrorist acts, power failures, other environmental factors like heat, cold, humidity, and dust. So what are the protection against all these physical damage? So fire procedures, staff training, fire extinguishers and smoke or heat detectors, floors, fire doors. Computer equipment might be located in a segregated area in which air conditioning and dust control operate effectively. So what happens is that when computers run, they generate a lot of heat, and that heat may be reason for fire. So if you are using an air conditioned premises, then the chances of fire is reduced. Also, if you are including dust control, then actually the main reason for heat generation is dust, because the heat is not able to get out of the exhaust of computers if there's dust accumulation there. Also, dust can result into short circuits. So dust control, air conditioning, these are the measures which can be used. Also, backup generators can be used against power failure. Off-site facilities also help. So for example, big companies, they all use off-site facilities. In case my data is placed in a server in Mumbai and Mumbai floods are there, then my data is also safe and my systems can be running if there's another site maintained, having all the backups, having all the things which are required to run the system somewhere else, maybe at a small, safer place, higher place, right? So these are known as offsite facilities. Offsite backup copies of data files, these will safeguard data against physical damage. We had studied about human damage, human risk, right? So human damage caused by human interference, such as unauthorized access resulting in theft, piracy, vandalism like intentional destruction of computer resources, vandalism. Not just computer resources, any properties, and an intentional damage to any property is vandalism. So When we are talking about data vandalism, that means intentional damage to the data. So human damage can be eliminated through proper passwords, restricted access through PIN codes, and closed circuit TV, CCTV, which we call security guards. If there are security guards in place, they won't let anyone enter. If there's CCTV in place, we can judge what is happening where. Better surveillance can be there. Hardware can be physically or electronically tagged to sound an alarm if it is removed from the building. Like what happens in case of any electronic stores. If you remove the device which is connected to a wire there, it will start uh, beeping. There's an alarm which goes off. So that kind of triggers can be used for security of data or maybe of the computer resource. Hardware can be locked down. You can keep the hardware in lock and key. What happens generally in case of your schools and colleges, the projector is up high and the associated CPU is locked in a proper iron chamber so that you can't alter with that, right? So things like that are the countermeasures against risks. Next, let's talk about more risks. Operational problems such as program bugs and user operational errors, like you accidentally deleted something or there's some bug which is hampering your system. Then bugs can be eliminated through proper testing. So bugs are something which are mistakes in the program. My program was intended to be very good, but sometimes there are some mistakes, or I would say some lacunas which remain in the programs. Those lacunas can be removed with thorough testing if the program is very new. Strict operating procedures are followed, then the bugs will be less. So what are the operating procedures? These are like manuals which are needed to be followed while processing any data or making any program. Adequate training of all staff members, all these things will eliminate the risk of operational problems and bugs. Next problem which can occur, may have occurred to you, is data corruption. Sometimes your photographs or your other data gets corrupted. It generally happens because of viruses or any hacker actions. So antiviruses and firewalls will stop your data corruption. Passwords and user numbers will obviously keep the hackers away. Offsite backup copies of data files will safeguard your data in case your main data gets hampered or corrupted. Data theft, example, fraud, industrial espionage. What is industrial espionage? Let's say if I steal the formula for making Coca-Cola, then that is industrial espionage. So industrial secrets are very valuable, and if these secrets are made public or are accessed without any authorization, then that is industrial espionage. Loss of confidentiality means data is made public. So these are all the ways in which data theft can happen. How this can be safeguarded against? Data encryption technique should be used where the data is encrypted in the password, and whenever the user is using the data, the user enters the password, then only data becomes accessible. Passwords and user numbers can be allocated. That again adds up to the security, and physical access control should be in place, like security guard or uh, maybe a CCTV. So these can also help in eliminating data theft. Not eliminating, reducing the risk of data theft. So risk cannot be eliminated, but yes, there can be controls in place which are known as countermeasures. Countermeasures can also be called as controls. So controls can be placed which help in data protection. TYU number 3. Raghu Limited holds data about many of its customers. It has recently set up an off-site backup. That's a good step of data to improve its data security. This potential data security threat will which potential data security threat will this measure most likely reduce? Means what is the risk which will be reduced here? Hacking risk cannot be eliminated due to offsite backups. In fact, hacking risk increases because now you have data in two places, one at the main place and another at a backup location. So that is not eliminated. The data theft can also be done from both the places. Now that is also not eliminate viruses. Again, there's the probability of virus getting infecting your data is now increased because the data is kept at two places. So that is also not eliminated. Fire or flood, yeah, that can be reduced. Fire or flood possibility can be reduced. Data loss due to fire or flood can be reduced because that's why you are keeping a database copy of that data, or I should say a backup of the data in some other offsite location. So D should be the answer. This is how you have to solve your questions. The next legislations are relating to health and safety in the workplace. Obviously, these relate to the premises or the workstation or the workshop where business is actually taking place, or I should say production activities or imparting of services is taking place. Overall, places where business is responsible to do business or business related activities, we are talking about those places. Business has the responsibility to make the workplace safe, not only for the employees, but for the customers also, which may be there or other related people also. So there are a number of potential hazards in workplace, especially if your workplace is a manufacturing unit. So that manufacturing unit can have moving tools, which can be very dangerous for a human being. That can have excess temperatures, temperature zones, or many other things can also be there. So some examples include unsafe electricals, torn carpets, poor lighting, wet floors, top heavy filing cabinets. So such kinds of things can be very dangerous. Imagine a torn carpet. Anyone who's walking on that torn carpet can get entangled and can fall and can break any bone or maybe get injured. Unsafe electrics can result in shock or electrocution also. Poor lighting impairs a person's ability to see through any objects or obstacles. Again, people can fall and get injured. Wet floors, people can fall. So there are indicators which maybe you might have seen in your college or you might have seen in your in shopping malls. Whenever they mop the floor, they place an indicator that the floor is wet and do not use this area or use this area with caution. Also, there can be like top heavy filing cabinets which can fall over to a person, and because of the weight, they can injure the person. So these are very limited examples of things which can happen at a workplace, dangerous things, hazardous things which can be there at a workplace. That means a workplace can be unsafe for work. To deal with this, many countries have created detailed legislation covering health and safety in the workplace. The law typically puts the responsibility for health and safety on both the employer and the employee. Yes, this is very important to understand that the employer's responsibility and is not only a responsibility, the employees are also responsible for their own safety. So if there's a wet floor and there's an indicator in place, still employees are using that place, then employees are responsible for their safety. The responsibility of employer was just to inform them. So what are employers' responsibilities and what are employees' responsibilities? We'll try to take a look at this. Employers' responsibility is to ensure employees are trained and safety policies are visible. Employers' responsibility is to protect sensitive information. Employers' responsibility is to avoid discrimination when recruiting, ensuring equal opportunities to all. So they should not discriminate against any caste or any color or any race or any religion. Employees' responsibility is to exercise a degree of care and responsibility when performing their tasks. So if they are not careful, they are negligent, they might get injured or others may get injured as well. Their responsibility is to follow the safety policies and not attempt to gain access to private information which they are not authorized to. So these are some of the employees' responsibilities. We'll read more here. Employers' responsibilities is to provide a safe working environment, prevent risk of health, like emission of harmful gases should not be there in the workplace. It should be flared up, or it should be burned, or it should be destroyed, processed in such a way that it is not, uh, it cannot access the areas where workers or humans are there. Ensure that plant and machinery is safe to use. Your plant and machinery is safe to use, and the safe working practices are set up and followed also. Inform staff of any potential hazards. Like as I gave you an example, there should be an indicator indicating that the floor is wet. Provide adequate first aid facilities. There should be first aid facilities in place. Check that the right equipment is used and that is regularly maintained. There should be proper right equipment. Like if I'm talking about a fire extinguisher, then the fire extinguisher should not expire. They should be useful. They should be placed in upright manner so that they can be used also. Set up emergency plans, and those emergency plans are needed to be communicated to the employees, and employees need to be trained. Employees' responsibilities are to take reasonable care of their own health and safety. So uh, a person's prime responsibility is their health and safety. Next is to take responsible care not to put other people at risk. Other people also can get injured because of a person's negligence. So it is employees' responsibility. Cooperate with their employer to ensure that they have adequate training and are familiar with their employer's health and safety policies. So the employees should always cooperate whenever there is some mock drill or training going in place. They should not avoid the mock drills. All right. Report any injuries suffered as a result of performing their job. So injuries should also be reported. Inform their employer if anything affects their ability to work safely. So if they find any unsafe environment, that should be informed to the employer. Right? All these things are employees' responsibility. Next is breaches of health and safety. What happens in case of breach of health and safety? If employers fail to provide safe and healthy working environment, obviously they will face charges and prosecution. They may be breach in common law, enabling employees to make a civil claim against them. So if a number of employees file a suit against the company who is not providing safe working environment, such kind of suits which are common to many people are known as class action. So class actions can be there, or a civil claim can be there. In addition, they may be guilty of criminal offense and be open to prosecution. So workplaces can be hazardous. Businesses can deal in hazardous chemicals or hazardous environments or hazardous processes, and that may result into harm to any human or anyone's health or safety. And all such health and safety measures should be followed, otherwise there will be prosecution. There's a TYU4. Let's have a look at it. Health and safety law is concerned with eliminating risk. As I told you, risk cannot be eliminated. Cannot be 100% eliminated. Pardon me for my handwriting, but risk cannot be eliminated 100%. So this statement in itself is false, right? TYU5. While Elizabeth was running down a staircase at work, she tripped and injured herself. Please note that she was running. She was running. There was no torn carpet or any cables, which resulted in her tripping off, and she got injured because of her own actions. It is employees' responsibility to take due care in workplace. So who is responsible? I would say Elizabeth herself is responsible if everything else is in place, like the pathway is well lit, there are no cables or torn carpets in place, the stairs are even, the stairs are dry, the floor is dry. If all these things are taken care of, then Elizabeth is responsible. Why? Because she was running. She was not taking care while using the staircase. All right.